Muy buenas noches, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. As always, muchas gracias to everyone for everyone's words, wishes, prayers, as the love and support everyone shares and sends my way. From the heart, gracias. Also, do please like, share, subscribe, and hype to the video. As do please check out the message now out on book on Amazon. Thank you. Well, everyone, this one I want to take you back to a personal experience I had with two good homies and the Peelies when they were up on death row. You know, I know I put this out, believe on Tony's channel, but I have not done it here, and I don't want to minimize the homies, right? But anyways, this is when we were in Becarranza in the state, right? We're busted, and it's right around the time, like I mentioned to you, when Wilbur was there and Pablo, right? They were part of the Beltran organization, but they were homies. So, anyways, we had actions to clappers, to phones. You know, we were able to make more calls on a private tip, because even though they were doing their thing and we were despised by them, they were still, you know, showing respect towards us. I'll say it like that, you know. Plus, I was the one that ended up tattooing Pablo, you know, before he got out. And, well, it was about one of the biggest massacres in Nayarit, right? But, anyways, I want to talk about the homie Raul and Viejo Cardova from Dogtown. These were two older individuals from Dogtown that I met as I was going through Rosarito, Tijuas, in that area, right? And throughout the time we were in Mexico, what you heard was good. You know, they weren't really responding like that to Pilis at first, right? But they did know people in Mexico where they had access to material, more so to requesón, uppers, right? Man. And they weren't stingy with it. What I mean by that, you know, in Tijuas where they stayed, homies that would get out there and they would find out, they would have a care package waiting on them, especially if they were coming out to Pinta, right? You know, put some money in their pocket for somewhere to sleep, food, and they would put some material they would give them some material to make, you know, money. It was on each individual if he knew how to flip it and keep it going, right? I know for a lot of people this is going to be like, that ain't really something positive, but ain't nobody willing to give you feria when you get out, and care where you sleep at too, right? You get out, like in my case, almost 24 years, and just pop out of Mexico, and if I wouldn't have had nobody, it would have been bad, period, point blank. So the homies, they were doing something for the raza, just plain and simple, right? But anyways, again, getting to the point, you know, we were in Becarranza, we were busted, right? All all four Pilis, and I got busted that night. But there were other camaradas there, as I mentioned before. We were aware of them, and at this time, the Piris were still slammed in death row. You know, More so, I want to speak about three of them, which is Ronie, Hector, and Weddle, or Eskimo as he goes by now, right? And excuse me, how out of all three of them, sincerely, Eskimo, at least through Amapil or whatever you want to call it, Tacable, he was the most strict one. And I understand it, he was flexing up. The homies were from his area. He felt entitled, and it was what it was. Now, just to keep it a buck, Hector and Wet on them, they were doing their thing, you know, because the older Güero from Tunerville was out in Tijuas, and he was plugging them up with the aretes. But everything changes in Mexico. As you guys seen with the war currently in Sinaloa, there's a boss one day, and then next thing you know, that boss gets clipped, and then there's one, two more different bosses, different police, and it starts cutting out people. It's just how it happens, right? And the aretes always been at war, at least with Sinaloa. And they started complaining, right, that we were doing all this. Remember a phone call? We were doing all this for the pipeline so that everyone would have access to it in the States, right? And when I say everyone, it's the Pilis or the righteous camaradas, right? And but they were still having to deal with these cats, right? So it get to them, it was said easy, right? They were in death row, and we were the ones sweating it out, losing heads, and trying to earn that respect to get that going out here, right? Just at the moment, we were in a place where I'm more than positive that 90% of homies doing their things or that they claim they're solid soldados would have gone through that torture. They would have bucked up straight up, you know. And I don't have nothing negative to say when it came to the Pilis, as none of us spoke of the four, right? We all took what we had coming, month and a half, whatever long it was again. But anyways, with this, you know, you could say I built a friendship with Abuelo, right? Keep in mind, these are older individuals in their 60s, but they were still going out their way to help the homies, period. However you want to face it, Pilis, Sureños, Southsiders, whatever it was, if you were part of the faction, the movement, they would treat you right. So the only option we had, because I guess the stuff they were getting from the older Güero was reaching over there wet, which is normal, It's part of the cause, Sometimes, especially with the aretes, more so, right? When it comes to the movers and putting that diaper on the baby, they don't put it on right. and the diaper leaks, things get wet. It's always to be expected, you know. Not every trip could be successful. There's a lot of things that could happen and it should be taken into consideration. But anyways, the three senores in the Andevro, they basically needed a plug, right? Till they were able to fix whatever they had going over here with the aretes. You know, again, I never messed with that. I disliked them individuals. So whatever they had going, it was personal between them, right? So we got Raul and Viejo from Dogtown and basically told them if they could get things together, you know, a couple P's for the senores, and they would take care of the Uber part, you know. And even though they felt uncomfortable, they feel more comfortable supporting the way they have been for years. They still couldn't deny it, right? Because it was a request from the upper ups, and it's just how it is. You know, once it's asked of you, you say chales. It could be it for you. All it takes is then for them to say so. No excuses, no nothing. It's just, hey, these two cats, don't mess with them. They're this, and that, and it's like if it's written on stone, right? And everyone, including myself, ain't gonna speak up. You're gonna put your head down and keep pushing. It's just how it is, you know. But anyways, they did a few trips, right? Everything went good. You know, the homies were actually going out the way to make sure that Chiquillo had the pañal on right to not get wet. And things were going out to SD and to Nella, right? And again, few trips, everything good. And then it just happened, you know, what usually happens. Not only did that get wet, but I guess amongst weighing it, it didn't add up. You know, there was an April missing here, 16. Again, it was all mad, you know. And you might say, oh, that's nada, right? But, you know, an April missing in every P times 30, that adds up, you know. It's a loss. And I understand that from their part. But, anyways, the homies, they try to clean it up, you know, with their own money and stuff. And at least with Ronie and Hector, they put a couple peas over to where they were needed to be put, and it was squashed. They did that same with Eskimo, and Eskimo did not let go of it. He was more strict, to say it nicely, right? And he felt they had looked at him in a funny way, which it wasn't even the case. For those that know Halle, once it gets wet, it's not gonna give the weight. Period, point blank. Especially meth. You're gonna lose. Even if you send a little bit more of what you're supposed to send once it gets moist, it's not gonna give the weight. And it's nobody's fault. It's part of you knowing the clause of the material. But anyways, The homies tried for a while, and Eskimo just wouldn't budge. He just said chalice, chalice, and he kept wanting more and more. At the moment, I didn't know what I know now of Eskimo, right? But anyways, they weren't working nothing out. And then an incident happened in Dogtown, in the neighborhood. There were some vatos, I guess, you know, in a car, and some other homies from a different neighborhood. They were running up towards the car shooting. The car was stopped. It wasn't moving. The homies from Dogtown that were in the car, they started busting back. Not to hit anyone, it was to basically have him slow down, stop, and give him time to get out the car and boogie, right? And Eskimo utilizes the green light. But you see, it wasn't really open like that. It was more so like, hey, give me 10 of those, or because of this, and that, I'm going to green light your neighborhood. Threatening, punking camaradas that all they're doing is a positive for all homies. Period. It don't matter what phase of the ladder you were in. So, the homie said they couldn't. Ever since they started messing with them. Keep in mind, Hector and Ronie, they went back with Güero, with Daretes, and Eskimo too, but he was still trying to double dip, right? He wanted 10 piece come out their pocket of material in Nella in order for him not to put that green light that had no basis. The car wasn't moving. The homies were defending themselves as they're getting out the car, and they ended up running. You know, it wasn't like someone got hit, or they drove up to a neighborhood and started dumping. It was none of that. It was all behind greed. And just because this individual can. I know for a fact that one moment Ronie and Hector told him, hey, just leave the vatos alone. But it's true what Güero Sherm said one time on video. They're carnales. If one carnal don't like what the next one says, he could tell him my view. And he's going to keep pushing his agenda. They don't have to agree. You got to always remember they're always competing. They're always at each other's neck. So that's nothing new. And then when the conceited individual like Güero, it really don't have no meaning, right? Going to war with another Pili. But anyways, I don't really want to make this very long. But the end of the day, he would not end up greenlighting Dogtown. He would end up sending word though to Mexico that old man Raul and Viejo Cardova from Dogtown were to get hit, removed. They were pieces of with no faction. Just because he didn't get his way, he didn't work them. And because, come on, you're in Mexico, you're not really moving it like that, but you're still trying, right, for the movement. That's what we're trying to build, a pipeline of going and coming, and us really tapping in with something that has it all 24/7. Not you going to the street and, hey, I need a couple of these. I have the feria in hand, and okay, don't freelance in Mexico. Get them out of here, type of thing, right? But that's not in any way what Eskimo seen. He just seen he didn't get his way, and sad to report, he first shot word about these two homies in Tijuas to the aretes, or the ones working with the aretes. As I said before, the only reason you're still hearing the aretes facts are because of the camaradas and the Pili still messing with them, or else they would have been out a long time ago, you know. And it's part of understanding why Bat got them passes for all the shady stuff he did in Tijuas. He was always spun out his mind. He had that little pad next to the airport where he liked them tenderonis. Just leave it at that. Because I got a lot of backslash. But anyways, the older homies, they went from doing everything they could out of their pocket for new arrivals there, fresh out of the pinta, like, hey, communicate with your mom, stay in a momo, here's some money to eat, here's some jale, try to spin it around, and if you need more jale, let us know. A lot of people don't open that door for you when you get to Mexico, especially, when there's a lot of camaradas hitting Tijuas, and you don't know who's funny, who's not, you know, but they were risking it. But since Eskimo never, ever saw the struggles of Mexico when it came to us in real time, to him it was easy. And the homies were found that way Tijuas does it, with a little bit of them here, another little bit there, and you guys get it. And it's just that simple. We're sitting down back in Becarranza, and including the Pilis, that old man from Boyle Heights. We all wanted to say something, but you know what? Well, I'll speak of me. At the end of the day, I was a coward. Even though my heart said, do it, my reaction was to put my head down, keep pushing it, and it was none of my business, as everyone else. And I really think it's funny, where we lost the sense of protecting our own. Now Billy has a right to tell you what to do, what your neighborhood's gonna do, what you're gonna do with the food you buy in prison, the package, what you're gonna make your family do if they go visit you often. So where's that soldado and the sureño? Remember, for those that know the true meaning of sur and sureño, it's just not existing no more. And I say that sincerely with hurt, because I wasted my time, my life, and I don't regret it. It's for what I believe in. And for all those that see me as, oh, I shouldn't speak about things and this. Why? For all those hardcore sureños, campoleros, please tell me why. So you're writing for something to the fullest, right? By you being a Suleño, you're a soldado under recognition, right? For the causa, okay? So you rather keep your gente, your causa, with blindfolds instead of having an idiot that's been there, done that, put in looks on a personal tip. I don't talk gossip. I don't touch on current stuff. And again, I'm not on here for poison. This is just simply a little look so that everybody can see things for what they are. And if they decide, hey, I want to keep wiggling, boogie, shoot up, boot up, y mambo, you know, more power to you. But I never had that. I'm not saying if I would have had it, I would have done anything different, but I sure would have liked it. How you gonna sacrifice your life for something that cannot be put out in a platter with honesty and clarity? But again, this is just simply, you could say an idiot, whatever, personal walk and experience. At the end of the day, I bled and sweated and sacrificed everything for the movement. And you know what? What do I what did I get? I don't know them individuals, no loyalty. I'm not referring to camaradas. Now the camaradas tie themselves to their issues, but they don't tie their stuff to camaradas' issues. They're a separate thing, right? So where's the mistake at? At the end of the day, don't let it be too late. Like in my case, I thank God for every day I wake up. But the facts are, I'm not gonna see this through. Just a matter of time. And you know what? I sure would hope and pray that those I try to push for for so many years in what I believed will not ever have to end up like me or go through what I went through. The heartaches, the sitting down, the hurting of the family. So, this is just an inside look. You could do everything for the movement, camaradas, even Billy's, but it just takes one of them to feel disrespected and not know what you went through, sweat and bled for to do that. And it's that simple to take it and take your career as well. That's the end look. But anyways, mi gente, with this said, thank you again. You know, I thank God I had complications with the chemotherapy I went in. They gave me pain medication. You guys know I don't like it, but it's really helping, at least in the sense of me being able to sit here and share with you. Please stay true to yourself and loyal to loved ones.